In theory, elections are perfectly run. Voters make their voting intent perfectly clear. Election officials are perfectly incorruptible and infallible. And when polls close, every single vote is perfectly counted. And so in theory, it makes no difference whether a candidate wins by 1 vote or by 1,000,000. Either way, he's declared the winner and the loser graciously concedes. Simple as that. But in practice, not so simple. In practice, elections are not perfect. They're messy and badly run, which means there's plenty of room for error, malfeasance, and disputes. And so in practice, there's a huge difference between a 1 vote and a 1,000,000 vote margin of victory. If the margin's 1,000,000, the loser will usually concede. That's because in any semi-respectable democracy, no degree of error or malfeasance could possibly explain a 1,000,000 vote shortfall. In contrast, if the margin is just 1 vote and the stakes are sufficiently high, then the loser will almost certainly dispute the result. In theory, there's a very easy way to resolve disputes. Count and recount the votes until we're absolutely sure who the true winner is. But in practice, the election may be so messy and badly run that this is impossible, especially if the clock is ticking. And so in practice, very close elections are decided not only by the true vote count, but also by other nebulous factors, like who controls the courts and other positions of power, who is the better legal team, who's prepared to fight a little harder and dirtier. This was most vividly illustrated in the 2000 U.S. presidential election, which came down to Florida. The first official count had Bush ahead of Gore by 1,784 votes, or 0.03% of the nearly 6 million Florida votes cast. In a perfect election, Gore would simply have conceded, but he didn't, and so began the 36-day recount battle. The final official result would be that Bush won Florida, and hence the U.S. presidency, by a 537 vote or 0.009% margin. Most subsequent analysts agree Gore should have won. As one writer puts it, there can be little doubt that more Florida voters who cast ballots in the 2000 presidential election preferred Gore to Bush, and that a well-functioning electoral system would have accurately captured this preference, thus making Gore the winner of the presidency. The 36-day recount battle has been covered ad nauseum in books and even an HBO movie. Here we'll simply mention 3 of the biggest controversies. Controversy 1, the confusingly designed butterfly ballot used in Palm Beach County. Depending on which academic analysis you believe, this confusing design cost Gore either several hundred or several thousand votes. Controversy 2, Katherine Harris, Florida Secretary of State. Oh, and also co-chair of Bush's Florida election campaign. It is well known that during the 36-day battle, she repeatedly hurried to certify Bush as the winner and stall recount efforts. But an earlier abuse of power was probably more consequential. Pre-election, she incorrectly purged thousands from the list of legally eligible voters. For example, a voter named Willie Steen was mistaken for a convicted felon named Willie Osteen and thereby wrongfully disenfranchised. A disproportionate number of such wrongfully disenfranchised voters were black and would have voted overwhelmingly for Gore. And now for the darkest controversy. On day 35 of the recount battle, 5 U.S. Supreme Court justices ruled to block all further recounts. This handed W the W and forced Gore to concede the following day. No prizes for guessing these 5 justices' political leanings. Take Sandra Day O'Connor. According to witnesses at an election night party, when the TV networks initially and incorrectly called for Gore, O'Connor was disgusted and exclaimed,
"This is terrible."
Her husband then explained that his wife was upset because they wanted to retire to Arizona, and a Gore win meant they'd have to wait another 4 years because she did not want a Democrat to name her successor. 5 weeks later, O'Connor would be one of the 5 justices that ended Gore's presidential hopes. The 5 justices' ruling was, of course, based entirely on sound jurisprudence and had nothing to do with their personal interests or prejudices. Now, let's go back to the puzzle of voting. In a perfectly run election, there are 2 clear-cut scenarios where your vote matters. But as we've just seen, real-world elections are not perfect. And so in real-world elections, what do we mean by your vote mattering? Does your vote even matter? One possible answer is that your vote simply never matters in real-world elections. As Steve Levitt, Chicago economist and Freakonomics author, put it,
if it's even within thousands of votes, it's not the votes themselves that decide the election because nobody can figure out how many votes are really cast. It's the courts that always decide, the judges who always decide.
This, though, was just a passing remark in a podcast. For a more serious analysis, let's take a quick look at the academic literature. 2 papers argue that your vote matters not when it creates or breaks a tie, but when it triggers a recount or eliminates the possibility of a recount. Doing the math, the papers conclude that your vote still matters, though less than it would in a perfect election. A third paper argues instead that there is some gray area where the vote is very close. Outside the gray area, either candidate wins for sure and your vote doesn't matter. But within the gray area, both candidates have some chance of winning, and your vote matters because it gives a tiny boost to your candidate's chances of winning. Doing the math, the paper concludes that your vote matters just as much in a real election as in a perfect election. The literature on the puzzle of voting is vast, but unfortunately, these few analyses are all I can find, which suggests that very little thought has been given to the issue. Moreover, even these few analyses have produced 3 different conclusions. So, when we ask, does your vote matter in real-world elections, we must unfortunately give the scientists' most common and most unsatisfying answer: we don't know, more research is needed. In the next video, we'll check out how tied elections are actually broken around the world.
Econ Cow is a new channel for educational videos, mostly on economics. I'm still trying to improve, so please feel free to leave me any feedback in the comments below. And of course, like, subscribe, and watch another video.